Hello, good morning, and welcome to this webinar from London School of Languages on teaching global citizenship. My name is Alex Webb. I'm a teacher and teacher trainer at the London School of Languages. And today, I'm going to be talking to you about how we can bring global citizenship into our English language classes, how we can make it a part of our English language lessons. Okay. If you do enjoy this webinar, please check out our webinar library. Okay, I'll tell you more about that at the end of the talk. We've got loads of previous webinars on there that you can watch, and they are all free to view. Okay, so if you enjoy this webinar, please have a look at some of the others that we have to offer. So let's get started, shall we? What is global citizenship in our English language classroom? To be honest, when I was thinking about this question, I thought that global citizenship is quite a broad idea. Okay, it's not just learning about other countries or other cultures. It's also about, for example, listening to other non-native English speakers, listening to the way that they say things perhaps differently to how native speakers say things. I think it's also a very important thing here, becoming more open to different ways of life. And I think open is the key word here. Okay. We live in an increasingly globalized world, and we are going to encounter ever more people from different parts of that world. And these people are going to have different ways of life, different cultures, different ways of doing things. And I'm not saying that we have to do things exactly the same way that they do them, but I think it's really, really important for us and for our students to become more open to these different ways of life and these different ways of doing things, and be more accepting of these things. And this is something that we can prepare our students for in the classroom by introducing them slowly to some of these different things that people do, the different ways of doing things, and that can make them better global citizens. Okay, and I think that all goes back to finding out more about other countries, finding out more about other cultures, how they do things, what they do, and how it's different, but also how it's similar to our way of life. And the final point on here is that English has been for many years, and is increasingly so, a lingua franca. Okay, and so it's the language that is used to communicate between two non-native speakers of English, but from different countries. Okay, and nowadays English is used as a lingua franca so often, and it's so important for students. It's a key that opens many, many doors, not only professionally, but also giving you the chance to travel, to experience new places, to meet new people. And so, English as a lingua franca is something that's really, really important, that we need to introduce our students to, and tell them, okay, you're not just going to be talking to British speakers or American speakers or Australian speakers or whatever. You are actually going to be speaking to other non-native speakers, and using English as a means to communicate with them. Okay. So why is it important to teach global citizenship? Okay, and people often ask me this, and I find the best way to answer that is with a video. Okay, so I'm going to show you this little video here, and this is for me one reason why it's important to make students aware of other cultures and other traditions in different parts of the world. So just enjoy this for a moment.
好容易嘅啫，好簡單啊！就咁就開頭。大家飲杯，飲杯，飲杯，飲杯。得啦！大家食啊！好嘢啊！好食啊！湯都飲埋添。The
English believe it's a slur on your host's food if you don't clear your plate. Whereas the Chinese feel you're questioning their generosity if you do. At HSBC, we never underestimate the importance of local knowledge, which is why we have local banks staffed by local people in over 80 countries across the globe. HSBC, the world's local bank.
So yeah, just a little advert there from HSBC. It's quite an old one now, actually, but I think it kind of illustrates the point quite nicely. Okay, it's all very well being able to communicate with people from different countries and different parts of the world. Okay, however, if you don't know about the different traditions, different expectations, different ways of life, different ways of doing things, then there can be misunderstandings. You might cause offense, whatever. And so not only is it important to learn the language of communication, okay, it's also important to find out a little bit more about the place and the people with whom you are going to be communicating on a regular basis. And this is clear, for example, important in business, but it's also important when you travel to visit any country. Okay, it's important to find out a little bit about that country and to respect the cultures and traditions of the place that you're going to. Okay, so continue on this. Why is it important to teach global citizenship? A year or so ago, I did a survey amongst the students at our academy here at London School of Languages, and that was, I think, more than 200 students were surveyed for this. Okay, and I wanted to get an idea of how many people were using English on a regular basis. Who were they speaking to? Okay, particularly in work situations as well. Okay, we asked mainly adult learners for this, but we also asked sort of older teens to kind of imagine what would be happening in their future working life as well. Okay, and it brought up some interesting results. Okay, so for example, who do you speak to in English on a regular basis? And the answer was non-native English speakers, 72%. So most of the time, our students are actually speaking to other non-native English speakers. They're not speaking to British people, American people, and so on very often. Much more common to be speaking to people from other parts of the world. Okay, and then we've got the next one. When I speak English at work, I usually speak to non-native English speakers 87% of the time. So at work, it's even higher. Okay, so in work situations, it's actually very unlikely for students to be speaking to native speakers. Only 13% said that they were speaking to native speakers. The rest of the time, they're speaking to mainly non-native speakers. Okay, and then we asked the students, is it important to have listening tasks with non-native speakers in their English lessons? And 65% of the students surveyed here said strongly agree or agree. However, when we go into our course books and we look at our course books, for example, to be honest, often most of the recordings are native English speakers. You listen to Cambridge exams, for example. Again, most of the people we listen to in these exams are native English speakers. They come from different parts of the world. They do have different accents. And so there is a challenge there for the students. However, they're not really listening very often to non-native English speakers, and that's something we'll have a look at later on in the webinar. Okay. The final question we asked them is it important for me to learn about the cultures and customs of the people with whom I communicate in English? Okay, and again, 63% strongly agreed or agreed with this. So you can see that the majority of our students want to learn about culture, customs of non-native English-speaking countries, non-native English-speaking people, and they want to listen to these people speaking about it as well. Okay, so I think this showed me that I need to start changing a little bit what I'm putting into my lessons. Obviously, I'm still going to be teaching grammar and vocabulary and so on and so forth, but I think as well it showed me that I need to incorporate other things into my lessons to bring a slightly more global taste or global element to my classes, to prepare my students for the things that they want in their English lessons which is non-native speakers and a bit more about global culture. Okay, and so how are our course books doing? Okay, can we find things about global citizenship in our course books? Well, there was a survey done, okay, by two guys from New Zealand, okay, and they wanted to find out, okay, are learners taught about New Zealand, and so which countries are most frequently mentioned in EFL course books, okay, and yeah, if you have a look, I will show you the results. I don't know if you want to have a think about it for a second, but yeah, interestingly, the USA is mentioned in 42% of course books, okay, or 42% of the time. The UK, 48% of the time. Canada, 3% of the time. Australia, 6% of the time. And New Zealand, just 1% of the time. But what we notice about all of these, and from this survey, is that all of these are English-speaking countries. So what about non-English-speaking countries? How often are these mentioned in course books? Okay, if these ones are coming up with such frequency in our course books, okay, where is the space for learning about other countries, okay, and other cultures, okay, where in all likelihood our students will be going, or the people from these places, they're going to be communicating with them, okay, and so there isn't much in our course books about this, and this showed me as well that I need to supplement the material that I'm using in class, okay, I need to bring in other elements to show my students, to teach my students about these things, because the course book alone is not going to have enough to help me make my students, or help my students become better global citizens, okay? Having said that, course books are improving, okay? And you can see we've got some examples here from course books here. I can't remember what country this one was. Oh, Borneo, I think. Yeah, Borneo. So we've got here a text with some nice images as well about Borneo. We've got a text here about Iceland, Dubai, and then this one is about festivals around the world. Okay, and so slowly but surely, we are starting to notice that course books are getting better at including things about other parts of the world and non-English speaking countries, okay? But it's just a start. I think there's still some work to do, some room for improvement, definitely. And I think therefore, as teachers, it's important for us to bring in materials, okay? Things that we think can help our students become better global citizens, to help them find out more about different parts of the world. We as teachers can choose and bring in stuff that we are interested in, or we think that will be useful for our students. We can also let our students choose as well, okay? We can let them come up with topics or countries or cultures or events that they think they would like to know about, okay? It doesn't have to be fronted from the teacher, okay? The students can come in with their own ideas. You could give them a homework task to think about something, or a place, a country, an event that they would like to learn about, and then they have to come in and tell the rest of the class why they want to learn about this place, and then you decide as a group which place you want to learn about, okay? And so yeah, course books are getting better, but I think we still need to supplement them a little bit in order to bring in more of these cultural elements into our classes. Okay, so what can happen if you don't know about the country you are visiting? Okay, what happens if you don't know about the cultures? And here you've got just a very, very simple example here of a Spanish person trying to greet a German, and yeah, and a clear example of a cultural misunderstanding. Okay, and so yeah, things can go wrong. Okay, you can suffer embarrassment, as this guy is here, and has suffered as I have many times. I've lived in Spain now for nearly 4 years. I still struggle with the kissing. Okay, do I go to the left first? Do I go to the right first? I'm worried we're going to meet in the middle. So COVID has been quite good for me on that front. No more kissing, so I'm quite happy about that. But no, it is something that can cause embarrassment if you don't know the correct greeting, or you don't know the correct protocol, or something like that. Or worse still, you can cause offense, a bit like the previous video that we saw. Okay, we saw where the people thought he wasn't satisfied, and he was not satisfied with their generosity, and they were not being generous enough, and you can really upset your hosts if you behave in the wrong way. Okay. There can also be misunderstandings. Okay, something that might be completely normal in one country might be completely unacceptable or completely strange in another country. And so again, we need to be aware of these things when we're traveling abroad, and we need to make our students aware of these things as well. And yeah, if you're teaching business students or adult students, if you don't know about the country you're doing business with, this can be very embarrassing, can result in a loss of business. Okay, again, you go back to that video. Perhaps that man would eventually have lost out on business with his Chinese colleagues, because they thought he wasn't gracious enough, wasn't accepting enough of their generosity, and so they decided not to do business with him anymore. And so I think in business terms, when we're teaching business English, bringing something in about international cultures, different expectations when you go to different countries is something that's really important. Okay, because when we think about it, most of our students, I would imagine, are probably learning English for professional reasons. Even the younger students, they don't realize it yet, okay? But the reason their parents send them to an academy or send them to an English school is because they want them to be able to get a good job in the future, and to get a good job in the future, you need a good level of English, okay? But that good level of English needs to be combined with finding out more about the cultures and expectations of the people and the countries with which they are going to be working. So, what can we do to make global citizenship part of our classes? Okay, so in the second part of the webinar, okay, what I'm going to show you are a few things that I have used in my classes and that I think might be useful for you to use in your lessons to make global citizenship part of the lesson, part of your English lesson, so that the students are still improving their English skills, but at the same time becoming better global citizens. Okay. And the first thing I'd like to show you is a little video resource. Okay, I think videos are a great way, particularly to engage younger learners. Okay, they can see it straight away. They can see things that are similar to their country. They can see things that are different to their country as well. Okay, these videos are readily available online. Okay, you can find all sorts of videos on YouTube. Okay, or in other sources. Okay, and they are readily available, really easy to use. Okay, and they can be easily adapted. Okay, and I've got a very nice example here. It's just a very short video. Okay, it's a short video about from a great website called Kids in Other Countries. Okay, kidsinothercountries.org is the link here at the bottom. Okay, I'll show you the video and then I'll talk a little bit more about it.
Lots of people don't have bathrooms or running water in their houses. My house is like that. This is where people get their water for drinking and washing clothes and taking baths.
Okay, so just a very short clip there. Okay, these videos on kidsinothercountries.org, they're about between 10 and 15 minutes long. Okay, obviously you don't have to show the whole video in your class. And they show children's lives in different parts of the world, normally in parts of the world where there isn't so much wealth. Okay, and I've used these with quite a lot of my younger learners, and they find them really, really interesting, really, really engaging. Okay, and it shows your students that not everybody in the world is as lucky as them. Okay, and these videos are all dubbed into English. Okay, so everything, all of the audio is in English. Okay, and so you can create lots of questions that you can ask the students, or you can first of all get the students to create the questions and then answer them and find out. Okay, they could then subsequently do a presentation, for example, about what they've seen in the video. Okay, and these videos are absolutely fantastic. Okay, generally what I like to do with them is I get the students to think about, okay, what's different from my country, but also what is similar to my country. Okay, and they find actually children's lives in a lot of ways are actually very similar to their lives here in Spain. Okay, but they do also see, okay, perhaps I'm a little bit luckier than some of the children shown in these videos, but they're really, really good quality videos. They're really, really interesting, really, really engaging. And I found that once I showed one video to my class, they were often asking, they wanted to watch another one. They wanted to find out about children in other countries. Okay. Other video resources, YouTube is great. Okay. And you can also use the ISL Collective is another great website where you can take a YouTube video and you can incorporate questions, turn it into a quiz and things like that. Okay, and it's a great way to bring an interesting topic about a different part of the world or a different culture into your classroom and have it to be really, really engaging and really, really interesting for your students. Okay, so I would definitely say that videos are a quick way, an engaging way to get your students interested and learning about different parts of the world, different cultures, different ways of life, and just show them that not everything is the same as it is here in their countries, which sometimes they don't realize. And so this is a really, really important thing to show them. The next thing I have, sorry, I don't want to show the video again. There we are communicative activities. Okay, and this is one of my favorite communicative activities that I do a lot. Needs to be with slightly older students, so perhaps teenagers, and of course with adults. Okay, and what you have here, you give your students a table. Okay, so you can see you've got 3 countries. You've got red land, blue land, and white land. Okay, and there you have 4 categories: attitude to meeting new people, physical behavior, when you meet new people, and what you eat with. Okay, and what students have to do is complete the table about the 3 countries. Okay, sounds kind of straightforward. All right, but the way you do it is that you give each student a roll card, which they have to act out these things. Okay, and so I'll give you the examples of the roll cards on the right here. Oh, hello. Sorry, there we are. Okay, don't know what happened there to the PowerPoint. So you can see we've got the different roll cards here. So you've got, for example, you come from Redland, you like to meet foreigners, but you really dislike being touched by strangers. In your country, you rarely look into each other's eyes, and you always avoid eye contact when you first meet someone. You eat with a spoon. Okay, and so they have to act in that way. Okay, but then the problem is they meet someone from Blue Land. Okay, in their country, people gently but constantly touch each other's arms when they talk. You eat with their hands. You like to meet foreigners, but you avoid people from white land. Okay, so blue land and red land are always going to be in a little bit of conflict, okay, because they're going to be touching one another, but the red land people don't like it, okay. And then you've got the white land people who love to meet people, express their enthusiasm with a lot of gestures, and when they meet someone new, they touch their earlobes and bow a little to say hello politely, and they eat with chopsticks. And so what you do, you give each student you maybe a group of 3 students are red land, 3 students are from blue land, and 3 students are from white land. Okay, and then you do a mingle activity, and they have to act in the way according to their description. Okay, they can't tell the other people what their card contains. They have to act it out. Okay, and then everybody has to complete the table using the information that they gather from interacting with each other. Okay, and I think this is a really great way to introduce students to the idea that not everybody from every country acts in the same way, eats in the same way, interacts in the same way. Okay, so it's a great way of showing students that there are differences all around the world, and this ends up being a really, really fun activity. It's a very physical activity. It's a lot of fun for the students, and then you can ask them at the end of the lesson, so what did you learn about this? What did you learn about the countries here, and how do you think this applies to the real world? Okay, a subsequent activity that I've done with the students as well after this is to repeat the activity, but they create their own country. Okay, and they create their own country or even their own planet. I've done before as well. Okay, and they create the cultural norms. Okay, they come up with all of the ideas themselves. Okay, and then you repeat the mingle activity. Okay, and so at the same time as them learning about this way of interacting with different cultures, they are also developing their English skills, because inevitably they ask you lots and lots of questions. Teacher, how do you say this? How do you say that? Okay, how do you, because they want to come up with really, really interesting ways of communicating with people, different cultural norms, different physical behaviors, and they don't know how to say it in English. So naturally, it brings up lots and lots of new vocabulary as well. And so I find this is a really, really fun activity and a really, really great way of getting students to think about what it means to be a global citizen. Okay, so what else can we do in our classes? Another thing that I really like to do are research projects. Okay, so research projects, students could research a country, a cultural event, all kinds of things really. For example, I've had them research different countries from Asia to Africa to South America. I've also had students do research on religious events like Ramadan and so on. Things that I know that they don't know about. Okay, and so I give them a topic and I get them to do the research. Okay, research can be done in different ways. Okay, if you trust your students to do it properly, you could set the research to be done for homework. Okay, however, you do run the risk here of students coming to class without having done it. Okay, alternatively, nowadays most of the students, or most of my students anyway, come to class with a smartphone, and so they could do the research in that way. Okay, looking things up on their phones. If you're lucky enough to have computers or tablets in the class, of course they can use them. Alternatively, you could also print out a few pages of information about the topic that you want them to research, and then they can pick out information from there. Okay, what's really, really important though, I think, is to give them a framework to follow. Okay, give them a set of questions that you want them to find out. If you just say research I don't know, India, that's too broad. Okay, they won't have any idea about what to do. They'll pick out random things. Okay, so you need to give them a list of things that they need to be researching. So for example, what's the population? Okay, what language do they speak? Okay, how many people live in the capital city? What is the capital city? All of this kind of things. Okay, give them guidance. Okay, if you don't give them a framework to follow, if you don't give them guidance, you might end up with kind of bloated, disorganized research projects that don't really have the desired effect. Okay. But what I really like about doing research projects is it's a real opportunity for students to work collaboratively. Okay, you may find that they speak a little bit of Spanish or whatever country you're in, the language of that country. However, they are going to be working together. They're developing, teams skills to work together, and they're also going to be developing their academic skills. Okay, because they're doing a research project, they have to learn how to find the information and then apply it to some kind of presentation. Okay, so they're learning how to work as a team, and they're also developing their academic skills. And for me, the best thing about it is that they just learn about a place or a culture that they didn't know about before. Okay, they're finding out something new about a new place, new way of life. Okay, and for me, that is the main goal of this activity. And like I said before, you can choose a topic, or if you want to, you can let your students choose the topic of the activity of the research project. Okay, and then once you've done your research project, okay, you can get your students to present their findings. Okay, this can be done either orally or in writing. It doesn't really matter. Okay, but the key thing with presenting the findings is all the students in the class benefit from the presentation. So although each student will have only researched one place or one culture or one event, okay, they will get the benefit of 5 or 6 because the other students in the class will present their findings. Okay, so not only will they learn about their topic, they will learn about the topics from the other students in the class. Okay, and what I like to do if I've done this kind of thing is get the students to make notes or answer questions about the other students' presentations. Okay, this just makes sure that they're listening. Okay, alternatively, you could follow it up with a quiz. Okay, there are so many great quiz apps now out there. There is Kahoot, there's Bamboozle, quizzes, and so on and so forth. You could, if you've got good students who are quite quick at these things, they could make their own quiz. Or alternatively, and this is something that I quite often do in class, while the students are giving the presentation, I quickly have my computer at the back and I create the quiz, and then we can do the quiz at the end of the lesson. So I do the quiz as kind of my note taking on the students' presentations. Okay, but the key thing about presenting findings is, again, we want to teach global citizenship, but we are also here to teach English. Okay, and so by doing a presentation, these students are improving their speaking skills, or they're developing their writing skills if they're creating a poster or an article or something like that. Okay, and so this is something that not only benefits them in terms of their knowledge of the world, okay, but they are also improving their English skills, which is really, really important. That's why they're coming to English classes. Okay. People often ask, how can students share writing? Okay, how can they find out from each other's writing? What I like to do with writing is to do kind of a gallerying activity. So once the students have finished creating a piece of writing, okay, this doesn't just apply to something about global citizenship. This could be any piece of writing. Okay, you take it, put some blue tack, put your pieces of writing all around the classroom on the wall, and then the students move around and they read the other people's writing, and maybe you say, okay, write down one good thing and one bad thing that you find in each piece of writing. Okay, and so in that way, students are still learning from reading each other's texts. Okay, and yeah, peer correcting and learning from what the other students do well and what the other students don't do quite as well. Okay, and so yeah, presenting findings, I think, is a really, really important part of any research project. Other thing that's really important for me is, we mentioned it earlier in the webinar, listening to non-native English speakers. Okay, so like we said before, most of our students are actually going to be listening to other non-native English speakers rather than listening to native speakers. And yeah, English is frequently used as a lingua franca. okay? And so this is something that will prepare our students for traveling to non-English speaking countries, okay? Just because they're going to Germany or Italy doesn't mean they're going to actually communicate in German or Italian. They're probably going to communicate in English, okay? And they're going to communicate with a German or an English person that speaks in English to them, okay? And so it's important to get used to listening to other non-native English speakers, okay? Now, it can be a little bit more tricky to find resources for this, okay? I've got an example here. I'll show you a little clip of it, okay? And then I'll tell you a little bit more about how you can find and make other resources with non-native English speakers. So just have a watch of this for a moment.
Tell me a bit about universities in your country. Are you going to university at the moment?
Yeah, I'm still a university student, and I have graduated from the postgraduate school, and I'm planning to go to university in the UK.
Oh, great!
Yeah, I love this place.
It's good. Nice to hear. How about you, Maria? Are you?
Yeah, I'm also a student and I study at the university in Russia, but probably I will take my master's degree at the university in the UK. I don't know.
That's nice. Is it expensive to study in your countries?
Actually, I think it depends, because if you wanted to enter a private school,
Yeah.
of course it's really expensive. I mean, and but.
So this is a very nice example here of two non-native English speakers from different countries, okay? So it's a real challenge for your students, okay? Because they have to identify the different pronunciation features of two different nationalities, okay? And at the same time, try to understand what they're saying, okay? This comes from a really great website called hancockmcdonald.com. They have a few examples of non-native English speakers with videos there. They have them for free on their website. There is also, they have a really great book called the Authentic Listening Pack, okay? And that's got loads and loads, it's a whole book, okay, with loads and loads of resources for listening to native and non-native English speakers, but all authentic situations, okay? So it's a really good resource for getting listenings if you want to find out more about that. But again, you can find loads and loads of resources for listening to non-native speakers, okay? So for example, YouTube is fantastic. Loads of people make videos in English and they are non-native speakers, okay? I quite like a YouTube channel called French Guy Cooking, and he travels around the world, meets people and asks them about the different techniques, different cooking techniques around the world, okay? And that's really good for you get non-native speakers, normally two non-native speakers from one from France and one from another part of the world. And at the same time, you get to learn about food in different parts of the world as well, which I find, yeah, really, really good. Okay, and you can find loads and loads of examples of non-native English speakers. Okay, if you are using YouTube, again, use the ISL Collective, make it into a video lesson, and then you can have comprehension questions or a quiz or whatever. Another thing that I like to do, if you're lucky enough to have other non-native English speakers in your workplace, in your school or in your academy, make your own recordings, okay? I've made lots of recordings with my non-native English teaching colleagues, okay? Just so that I think it's a real opportunity for students to hear different accents, different pronunciations of certain things, okay? And yeah, make your own recordings. They are as good, as useful as anything that you will find in a course book, okay? So there's nothing wrong with with making your own recordings. So very briefly, before we come to the end, okay, what about the risks of discussing culture and so on in our class? Well, you might end up with certain inappropriate comments, perhaps. There might also be sometimes opinions that make you or make other students uncomfortable. Perhaps as well, you might find that students lack interest. They're just not really interested in learning about about other places. They like their town where they're from, or their country where they're from, and they don't want to know anything else. Okay, can't happen. Okay, and you might also find that you have some major differences of opinion within the class, and that can lead to conflict, perhaps. So how can we avoid these risks? Okay, well, for me, the first thing is to set clear parameters for debates and discussions. Okay, tell your students in advance, I will not accept any abuse, any kind of conflict that's kind of over the top. You have to say, no, this is not acceptable, and we would end the discussion there. Okay, I think it's also really, really important to get to know your class before discussing potentially controversial topics. Okay, don't talk about a topic if you know that it's going to lead to conflict. Okay, so you need to get to know your class a little bit. Don't go in day one, okay, and talk about something really, really controversial. Okay, get to know your class, find out what they like, find out what they're interested in, find out what works and what doesn't, and then you can go into start talking about different countries, cultures, and so on. Okay. To deal with lack of interest, I think what's really, really important is just to set the context. Okay, have lots of pictures, videos. Okay, get them to start thinking about, kind of create the need to find out. Okay, putting pictures up on the board, okay, or on a handout, that the students have to kind of look at them and think, what is that? Okay, get them to want to know. Okay, create the need to learn. Okay, and by giving them kind of pictures to have a look at, it helps engage interest, and then they're much more open to finding out about the things that you have planned. Okay, but of course it may all crash and burn, it may not work well. Okay, so make sure you have something else up your sleeve in case you need to end an activity early. Maybe the students are fighting or just not interested, so have a game or a reading text or something, or some discussion questions or whatever. Okay, just to have that up your sleeve, ready, okay, in case you do need to end an activity early. Okay, so my conclusions, okay, from this talk. Okay, I think it's really, really important to create lessons that allow learners to engage with other cultures and improve their cultural awareness. Okay, as I said throughout the talk, students these days are going to be traveling to more and more countries. They're going to be using English to communicate with people from all around the world, and so they need to be aware of the different ways of life, different ways of doing things, different cultural norms, and that is very, very important. And equally important, it's also for students to listen to other non-native English speakers. Okay, that is what they're going to be listening to in reality most of the time. They're not going to be listening to English speakers, native English speakers. They're going to be listening to other non-natives, and so it's important that we bring that into our lessons as well. Okay, and finally, I think activities aimed at promoting global citizenship, they need to be devised, adapted according to the specific group of students. Okay, like I said, get to know your students first. Okay, find out what they like, find out what they don't like, and make sure you tailor the lesson towards the kind of things, the kind of activities that they enjoy, and the kind of activities that they are interested in. Okay, and I think that would be really helpful and a really good way of bringing global citizenship into your classes. If you do have any questions about the webinar, please feel free to contact me at alex@london-school.com. Also check out our website. Okay, you can find other examples of our webinars. There's a whole webinar library on there. As I said at the beginning, this webinar library is free, so feel free to browse, peruse all the different websites that we have. Webinars, sorry. Okay, and of course, check out our Facebook page and our Instagram page. Follow us on Instagram, okay, and you can find out about upcoming webinars and other events and things that we have planned. Okay, so thank you very, very much for joining me today for this webinar. I hope it was interesting for you, and yes, we hope to see you at another webinar in the future. Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye.